Twins lose their fourth in a row, all at home. Final score tonight versus Atlanta, 5-1. We're breaking it all down next on the Locked On Twins postcast.
You are Locked On Twins postcast, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Back in the lab, back at it, another Minnesota Twins postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. You got myself, Luke Inman, at Luke_Spinman. That's the man, Theo Tollefson. Give him a follow, at Theodore Tollef1, Twins expert over at Zone Coverage MN. And Theo, before we jump into all the action from tonight, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Oh, I'm just sick to my stomach. I can't even watch this.
How can you not be?
Sick to my stomach. Okay, here we go.
How can you not be after this week?
Okay, I'm not the only one. Game 3 versus Atlanta, trying to shake off the bad mojo, the bad juju here from the past week or so. David Fest on the mound. Pretty rock solid, man. Pretty friggin' fantastic, honestly. Gives up a solo shot in the first, but then settled down, retired 11 in a row and 17 of his final 18. He was great. It was weird because bottom 6, both starting pitchers were still in, something we haven't seen at least in a while for this Twins team. Chris Sale was great, per usual. Castro tied it up at 1 apiece, bottom 6, and then Rocco turns to the bullpen, and that's when you put the kids to bed. Wheels fall off. Theobar gives up 2. Alcala gives up 1. And the bats just couldn't rally back. That's been a common theme here these past, 10, 12 games or so. Final score, 5-1. And unfortunately, just more salt in the wound type of game, albeit maybe not as dramatic, maybe not as gut-wrenching as some of these previous losses. I'll give them that. But just give me your biggest takeaways, kind of your 8 topics from this one. Then we'll talk about Festa's night as well next.
Everything except the starting pitching is just falling apart here. I mean, you could easily still make the argument, the last 2 games aside from tonight, things are falling apart for the entirety of this team. But I think Festa's start tonight is what was the saving grace of the starting pitching, is doing, exceeding expectations for where they're at without Joe Ryan, without Chris Paddock in this rotation right now.
Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest takeaway. And everything else, I mean, bullpen, you make some moves. Trevor Richards gone since we last talked. Michael Tonkin back for his second stint with the team, 3rd overall, 2nd this season but, big shakeup of the bullpen. You're hoping those reinforcements are coming soon. Unfortunately, Louis Varland was used as a reliever for the St. Paul Saints tonight. He went 5 innings, though.
Ooh.
Very long relief, but, ramping him up. I think they're at the point where they're waving the white flag as using him as a starter and just trying to make him the long reliever, because that's the best you can do at this point in the year, no matter what level he's going to be at. So, and this offense and that defense, especially, it would have been a 3-1 game and a lot more obtainable in the bottom of the 7th. But, that Manuel Margot play out in left field, it's just been a bad thing for him all season with his defense. But that one was extremely costly and really put this game out of reach. Not entirely compared to the last 2 nights, but that was just the moment where you're like, man, that's it.
Yeah. Quick little tease, by the way. I'm going to ask you what the 2025 outfield for the Twins looks like. So hold on to that. But yeah, we got to spend at least another minute or 2 on Festa because, again, 6 innings, 2 hits, 2 earned, 1 walk, 7 Ks. I mean, I get it. I know we don't have the same bar, right? The same standard for some of these young guys like we do for Bailey Ober and Pablo, etc. But even with the lower bar, right, that was so encouraging. What was working for him so well? What makes him so unique, or at least tonight?
I mean, he had great command of the strike zone until his final batter with Marcell Ozuna to start the top of the 7th, and he gave up his first walk there, and that was it for him, and his pitch count was working well. So, I mean, aside from that first hit in the first, that was it. Yeah. I mean, he really was dominating and keeping Twins in the game, but the bats just could not keep up with Chris Sale. And unfortunately, this was not the version I'm used to seeing of Chris Sale at Target Field, where Twins bat him around and get him knocked out by the 4th. But yeah, it was
I was just going to
I
say
think
88,
everything.
88 pitches, 6
Yeah.
innings. Obviously, like game flow and things like that play a big factor. There's a lot of variables to this. I get it. But
Of
when
course.
it comes to the young guys now that we're going to have to lean on, obviously Festa, Zebby, even Woods Richardson, with the bullpen the way it is, does Rocco even have like the luxury to keep these guys on, a really short leash and keep this super strict pitch count anymore? Does he have that luxury anymore at this point?
Well, the luxury was gone for the majority of this series. I mean, obviously, Monday night, that game should have been in a delay immediately. I think that might have bode
Yeah.
different for Ober, especially with how powerful those wind gusts were just coming through the entirety of the Metro. Um, and then last night, Woods Richardson didn't go as deep as he's been of late. So it was miraculous that Festa was able to get his first 6 innings in the major league, like a 6 inning start, his first one ever in the majors tonight. And that was huge for the bullpen. But, even with Tonkin showing back up, being a fresh arm today, that just still was not enough.
Yeah, yeah. Nick Nelson on Twitter. Twins cut Trevor Richards less than a month after making him their lone deadline acquisition. The front office's failure rate on MLB reliever additions is unbelievable. I know it's been brutal, their track record, that is, but you could probably pull out a couple more names faster than I could. How bad was this Richards stint, big picture, when you look back at some of their other acquisitions the last 5-10 years? I guess, how bad has this front office actually been at the deadline and trying to find capable arms?
I think, we can go all the way back to where the first time this front office was really buyers. I mean, they had reason to be in 2017, but it was their first year, even sneaking in on the wild card. But look back at 2019, Sergio Romo has been the one outlier where that acquisition worked well, not only for 2019, getting those last 2 months, but keep him in 2020.
Yeah.
Sam Dyson, who was the other guy they acquired at that deadline, he was bad as a reliever, even worse as a person. Look it up at your own risk. And then, I think the stain of Jorge Lopez is still there from 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he's gone through a lot more on the personal side where that was, not just, the results on his mound. It was like things going through his son battling cancer. That was definitely weighing on him, both physically and mentally. So I try to cut him some slack on that alone because, anyone who's a parent should know like how much of a burden that is.
Yeah. There's the human element to this stuff.
Yeah,
that sometimes
so
we don't think about and talk about enough.
Yeah, and obviously I don't think there's anything like that in Richard's case, and his command was just unbelievably bad. But excluding, guys they've gotten at the deadline, the only reliever this regime of Falvey and Levine that they've signed for multiple years was Addison Reed back at the start of 2018, and he didn't even make it through the entirety of his first year of that 2-year contract.
Woof.
So pretty much they have gone through just putting Band-Aids in the bullpen and everything will work itself out. Well, when you get to this point in the season where, your top arm is still great with Griffin Jax, he's still a top 10 reliever in the game right now. Duran, he's been solid, not as great as the last 2 years, but still very dependable. And then everyone else is just hit or miss at this point. You need more. And obviously, with this last offseason, Josh Hader got a ridiculous amount of money to kind of be a setup man and push Ryan Presley, who has been phenomenal since joining the Astros, into a setup man role. So, yeah, the market's not in the favor with, the Pohlads budget that they give their front office to work with. And now we're just seeing, how this is falling apart. So, thankfully, rosters expand on Sunday. If Varland's not up and they're going to give him an extra week just to ramp up as a reliever, Josh Winder is going to be back, guaranteed.
Well, I think you may have answered this question then, because I was going to ask you, like, what is the rhyme or reason? What's the catalyst? Specifically, the last couple years, was it more about just them being afraid or didn't want to give away any of their young studs? Because why I bring that up, they've got the number 4 farm system in the majors for a reason. So it's not like there isn't a method to their madness in that approach too. Like, that's got plenty of pros to that approach as well. Or was it just because they're just so cheap at the deadline and in the offseason too? I was just going to ask, what is the catalyst, you think, to having such a poor track record with these acquisitions?
No, and that's the thing. I think it is definitely, with the budgetary constraints, I think, the actions weigh the wording for all that, that, when you're not going out and getting someone who's probably going to be more than $10 million as a reliever, that's not going to be your primary closer. that's telling. And, we're at the point in Major League Baseball with where salaries are at. You got to get a solid reliever for more than $8 to $10 million. I mean, especially if you even want him as a number 3 guy in the bullpen at worst. That's just where we're at in today's game and economics. So, yeah, I think that's the thing. And they're just going to, and they've done a great job, don't get me wrong, converting these young arms who look like they're going to be starters into solid relievers. I think we can't overlook how great of a season Cole Sands has been, even though he's definitely wearing down a little bit. I think he's been another success story where, they tried him out as a starter when he first got called up, didn't work out. Now he's been a solid reliever. But now he's the number 3 guy, looking at, second highest career innings this year between the majors and minors. And, I think Varland's on that track to move back into a full-time reliever role, and not just for the end of the season, but like going in the future. So it's just hard to see where this is going to keep going.
All right, I froze just for a second.
Yep.
I froze. You got me back, though. Here's Aaron Gleeman on Twitter. Check this out. Minnesota Twins relievers have allowed an MLB high 45% of their inherited runners to score this season. That's the highest rate in team history. I mean, that's just kind of wild when you really think about it. Anytime you're breaking 60-year-old team records, that speaks volumes.
No, that's not great. The writing's on the wall that you got to get your best arms up here no matter who they are. And I think everyone can easily argue Varland being the second long reliever to Cole Sands right now would qualify as having one of your best 8 arms out of the bullpen within the organization in terms of who's ready to be at the major league level. And, Winder's been pretty solid as well. And like I said, I think they might still give it an extra week of Varland being a reliever in St. Paul next week, but we'll see what happens from there. So I think that there's some optimism there. There was an injury update, as I know we'll get to, on Chris Paddock. So we'll just go from there.
Rocco report time, game 3 versus Atlanta. What stuck out? The Rocco report, it says what?
Leaving Festa in for the 6th and, letting him get that mark, finally getting that first full 6 innings in the majors and 1 start out of the way. So him taking him out after he walked Azuna, I get. But I don't think Thielbar was the guy to put in after that. And I know he is going there, but when you only got 1 lefty left, and fortunately, there is more good injury update news, and I know we'll get to that in a second. But when you only got 1 lefty and it's him with the seasons he's been having, I think you got to just go with one of your better arms, especially with just how the series played out, even if they're a bit tired.
Yep, well said. Injury updates plus our nerdy stat of the day. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, today's episode brought to us by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, the formula for winning championships. Also what keeps your ride or die alive. In eBay Motors, they got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to the ultimate peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights. They got it all. And whether you're into speed, power, or style, they got you covered. 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back with all the parts you need at the prices you want. Easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Okay, quick injury update. Buxton, whoever it may be, Brooks Lee, Correa. I know you mentioned Paddock. Sounds like Lee should be up here soon, right?
Yeah, I think at the very latest, they'll just activate him when the roster can expand from 26 to 28 on Sunday. Okay. So very latest, he's back with the team for the last game of the homestand against the Blue Jays. Okay. Buxton still TBD. Obviously, Correa being TBD. That's just, I think the absence is definitely being felt of not having those 2 in the lineup right now more than ever. But on the pitching front, there is good reason for Thielbar not to be the only lefty left for the rest of the season. Okay. So Funderburk's going to be coming back, as we talked about before. And then earlier today, Brent Hedrick, who has not pitched since April. His second start was St. Paul Saints, where he began the season. He started a rehab assignment with Fort Myers today, pitched, I think, an inning third and only gave up one hit, got a couple of strikeouts. So on the right track, and just given, the fact that Okert's been DFA'd, Funderburg's hurt, Thielbar's not been great. He started this season as a starter, but, the desperation is if he's healthy, he's looking good, he's on the 40-man, might as well give him a call up, see how he goes. At this point, there's
can't be any worse. Come on now,
exactly.
Seriously, that's where we're at. Where are you at with this whole Royce Lewis getting some run, maybe moving to second base when Brooks Lee gets brought up? Like, what's the ideal defense look like, I guess, with Royce, Brooks Lee, and then when Carlos Correa's back? Plus, I guess you got Castro as an option in there as well. Like, what's the top two options being thrown around and talked about the most? And what's your preferred option when it comes to this defensive lineup?
I think right now, just with how things are, I think when Lee is back, Correa, we know, is still probably going to be another 2 weeks at best. Okay. He will be playing shortstop more frequently to alleviate Castro, because there have been some solid plays, but not so great plays mixed in there as well. And I think everyone would trust Lee over him. So especially after Sunday afternoon's game with what happened with Julian, there's no harm in trying Lewis there. And he played a lot of games in second base, in 2022 with the Saints, and I think he did a bit on rehab assignment. So it's not foreign to him, but just getting him reps there, I think it can't be any worse with what we saw from Julian this last week. And Miranda's been very solid, especially compared to last season when his shoulder was just giving him so much pain at third base, that I think you're at a point where you can definitely trust Miranda's defense to see how Lewis does at second base until you get Correa back. And then you can have a bit more flexibility with, shuffling guys around a bit and, playing them to more of their strengths on the defensive spectrum.
That's a good segue, actually. The Athletic Power Rankings are out. Twins drop from number 8 to number 10. Kansas City leapfrogs them, as they should. But this week's blurb, it's around each team's biggest August move. And for the Twins, it says, quote, if Edward Julian gets promoted back to the majors. So basically it just talks about how much they thought they were going to get out of Ed Julian this year, how desperately they need an offensive spark right now. He just had that 4-hit game for San Diego just a week or so ago. What is your assessment of this whole thing with him just kind of going back and forth? Like, where are you on the Ed Julian thermometer, I guess, so to speak?
I've been saying it all year. It's just a pure sophomore slump. The league's caught up, and he's not had the time and ability to give himself, the confidence
make
to
the proper adjustments.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be a learning lesson, and we're not at the point where he needs to be given up on yet. I think that's where they're at with Alex Kirilloff. I think Kirilloff is more likely to be out of the picture long-term this offseason than Julian.
Okay.
And especially because Julian's going to platoon real well as a left-handed infielder and, probably do first, second base DH platoon versus Kirilloff, who's, I don't think, as much as an outfielder anymore as he used to be when he first got called up. And I just don't know where he's going to be fitting in.
It also goes on to talk about just kind of how frustrating it is to be sitting here as a Twins fan in August with kind of the same thing they dealt with last year. No Buxton again, no Correa. Royce Lewis feels very fragile every time he's out there. Do you think this whole situation, the whole vibe, I guess, is the same as last year at this time, 30 games before the playoffs or so? Because I think for me, on one hand, it's more than fair to point out, yes, there is all these big name injuries they're dealing with. Again, that is very frustrating. But at the same time, 2023 Twins and 2024 Twins feels like there's a way bigger and different story to tell, I guess, between, last year's team and this year's team, especially when it comes to kind of their strengths and weaknesses and how they're winning games. But maybe you feel different. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if results have been a lot different, especially over these last 3 series where they wouldn't have gone 2-7. We might be saying they're in a lot better shape and things aren't as bad, but
they're not making it easy to say that, though.
No, I think what's making it easy somehow is the fact that they're still 3 games up on the Red Sox for the last wild card spot. They're only 3 games back with Cleveland still, because Cleveland and Kansas City just played a 3-game series against each other. No, 4-game.
Yep.
And I think they split it.
Yep.
Or one way or the other. And they're only still behind Kansas City by 2 games and Cleveland by 3. So with how the division shaped up versus last season where it was pretty much in their pockets, but, their winning percentage to get to the end, it just felt like they were limping in because of all these injuries and things were a lot safer, but you don't have that luxury like you did last year. So I think that raises the ire to panic a little bit more.
No, I think that's a good breakdown. I think that's fair, a fair assessment for sure. By the way, Kansas City and Cleveland just got done with a 4-game series. Kansas City won 3 out of 4.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah. We talked about, I think it was last week, we talked about kind of like playoff X factors for the Twins. Who's it got to be? Who's it going to be? Now it just feels like, to your point, as you just broke down, we got to worry about like making the playoffs first and foremost, just the way everything's kind of unfolded the last 2 weeks. So what or who, I guess, needs to be the X factor for this team these last 28 games or so for them to turn things around? Like what's got to happen and who's got to make it happen the most?
The lineup needs to get their S together, I think, right now, more than anything, because, I mean, they did have a good fight last night, but today, I mean, Chris Sale is who he is, but come on, there were definitely opportunities, and I think looking at it, it's got to be Jeffers, it's got to be Miranda picking things up. He's still got some good county number stats on the season, but, he's been slugging really badly of late in the month of August, and I think those two are the real standouts. They're going to be playing pretty frequently. They need to be doing something a bit more to really make things work for themselves and this team.
Yeah, no, well said. Nerdy stat of the day. You got any crazy stat or fun analytic, Twins related? Lay it on us.
The only fun thing to mention is this is the first 6-inning start that Festus had since June 14th, since he was with St. Paul. That was 2 starts before he made his major league debut against the Diamondbacks. That was on the road against the Louisville Bats. So that's the best I got, and I don't think anyone can blame me for just defaulting to that after tonight's game.
That's actually way overachieving from what these Twins have given you the past couple nights. That was actually an overachieving nerdy stat of the day. We'll take it. Don't go anywhere. Got to preview these last 3 home games versus Toronto. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members to date. And for me, my money, it's just by far the easiest. It's the most exciting way to get in on all the action while you watch your favorite sports and you watch your favorite players. It's so simple. All you got to do, you pick more or less on 2 or more players' stats, and you watch the winnings roll in. Baseball season, obviously, still in full swing here. So whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, home runs, you name it, they got it. Take your pick on more or less and add them to your Prize Picks entry today. Plus, they now offer Apple Pay, quick and easy deposits into your account all season long. Download the Prize Picks app. Use code, all lowercase, Locked On MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Okay, 3 more at home. They absolutely have to salvage this 9-game homestand with, at minimum, 2 out of 3 now versus Toronto. Minimum, like absolute minimum. You get tomorrow off to rest up, shake it off. Desperately need that night off for sure. So what's the scouting report? I know we kind of touched on it at the beginning of this 9-game homestand, but what are the things you want to see from this team to start building some momentum back up? And then just give us a quick little 30 seconds on the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, definitely need that lineup to just bring things together hitting wise. Obviously, an extra day of rest is going to be huge for the Twins bullpen. So we'll see what comes of that. And, if there are any changes between now and Friday, you got to hope Brooks Lee is back. And if not, Sunday at the very latest. So, yeah, the Blue Jays, they underperformed. They were sellers at this deadline. The Twins did get Trevor Richards from, as we well know. And, their run differential is -66 compared to the +63 of the Twins on the season. So there is some positivity there. They still got some solid starters that everyone is familiar with, like Kevin Gausman, who will be pitching, I believe, on Friday. Yep, on Friday. And then it's old friend Jose Barrios against Zebby Matthews Saturday. And then on Sunday, to finish out the series, they got one of the rookies, Yariel Rodriguez, going on the mound for them. So the inexperienced Yariel Rodriguez against Simeon Woods Richardson, the veterans are having their mediocre seasons. I mean, we definitely saw how Barrios struggled down the stretch in many years as a Twin, and he's kind of going through it again. So you're kind of meeting them at the right time. The unfortunate side is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is back to his MVP caliber
he's
form.
heating up. Uh-oh.
Oh, he's so much better this season compared to the last two.
Okay.
But is he going to win MVP? No, it's going to be Bobby Witt Jr. or Aaron Judge. We've already had that well established.
That, yep.
But he's back to that, he's a lot more dangerous than he has been in a long while. So you got to be careful of that. But the rest of the offense has been pretty mediocre. So aside from one hitter, which you can intentionally walk if it really comes down to it in the worst case scenarios, it's looking pretty solid. But you need to do your work as the Twins lineup, as the Twins bullpen and rotation, keep things going. Fortunately, Pablo's starting on Friday, coming off his best start of the season, going 7 against St. Louis, which was phenomenal to see in person. Especially he had extra juices flowing against Sonny. So yeah, and I'm also glad this last 2 home series we at least had the victory against Sonny Gray and didn't have to have that extra narrative added on top of all this mess.
We got enough salt in our wound. You can't fit any more salt in these wounds right now as a Twins fan.
I know.
So, yeah, thank goodness that didn't happen. Last one, then we'll get out of here. I know I teased it at the top, and I think I asked you this once, maybe a month or so ago, but maybe your answers change. Maybe there's just, I don't know, a new line of thinking around it now. What does the 2025 outfield look like, assuming – like we all are, Max Kepler is probably no longer a Twin? Like, who's the 3 starters from left to right, and who's that first guy up off the bench for them when they need a 4th guy to step in?
I think the easy answer right now is Larnaka left, Buxton center, Wallner right, Austin Martin being the utility outfielder.
Okay.
Yep. Or Willie Castro. You can honestly answer one or the other.
Yeah. Anybody, any like 5th wild card outside of Castro, that being that 5th guy?
Deshaun
any other
Kersey
wild card
Jr.
that could make this more interesting than what it is right now on paper?
Yeah, Deshaun Kersey Jr., who's had a very solid season, all with St. Paul Saints this
center
year.
Fielder,
left-handed hitting center fielder, so another left-handed outfield bat, which they've tried to avoid this year, and that's why Margot's here. But with he's performed,
right? He's the speedster.
Yeah, he's got a lot of speed, can get a lot of stolen bases. His defense is honestly phenomenally better than what we've seen in Margot late. So you're getting an upside there. It's just he's not right-handed hitter. So
got it.
I think he would probably be performing at a similar level at the plate to what we see of Willie Castro.
Okay.
So not bad, but not phenomenal, at least as of late.
Right. Okay. No, that's good to know. And that was about what I assumed. I think that's what a lot of fans, what a lot of people listening at home assumed as well. But it's just kind of fun to get a little gauge of what that's going to look like, knowing it's probably going to look a little different than what we've been used to with Kepler out there for so many years. All right, let's get out of here. Twins get swept. Losers of 4 in a row. Division lead, 3.5 games now again. A day off tomorrow. Much needed. Then 3 more at home versus Toronto. First pitch Friday, 7:10 p.m. Huge shout out to all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. Rest assured, we'll be back each and every game right here, breaking it all down. Got to go check out all of Theo's work on X. Give him a follow at Theodore1, plus all the work he's always ripping up over at ZoneCoverageMN.com. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, help us get to 8,000 subscribers. That's always much, much appreciated. All right, Theo Tollefson, Luke Inman on X at Luke_Spinman. We'll see you next time. But until then, signing out.